Welcome, everyone. It is the 20th of October, 2021. This is question time. As always, excited to be here. Sunny day and very, very good news over the weekend. Melbourne's lockdown is over. Now, exciting for some. We'll get out. We'll get to do things. Maybe, maybe not. Unfortunately, we still can't be back in the office. So we will probably still be coming live from our homes for another few weeks. But very, very excited. The end is in sight. We'll be near, and hopefully before the year is out, we'll be back live in the office. Mix it up. We can actually be all together and make this an even better experience for those of you coming to us from your homes or your offices or your holiday homes or wherever it is around the country. And even I know we have a lot of international people joining as well. So welcome, everyone. And hopefully today's session will be a good one for everyone. All right. Hopefully most people have dropped in. As always, this will go for about 30 to 40 minutes. So, to get the most out of today's session, turn your phone off, put it on silent, turn it over, get this here. Don't put it down and up, turn it face down so you can't see it, and really focus because, I promise if you do focus, you get involved, you be active and participate today, then you really, really will get the most out of today. And that's how, I think that this will help you wherever you are in the journey, move you forward. So before we get into it, I always like to just warm us up and get started. So I want you to all think about this, particularly those of you who are new and this is your first session today. I want to know what is more important, information or knowledge? So just take a moment, think about it in your life, your view. What do you think is more important, information or knowledge? All right, I'll give you another couple of seconds. Put your finger on the screen, whatever it is, keep yourself honest. Okay, the answer is knowledge. Now, why do I say knowledge is going to win the day? Well, information is just organized data about something, whereas knowledge is an understanding through experience or education. So the reason why that's important is that there is a ton of information out there. We live in the information age. It is the fourth or the fifth, or I don't know what number industrial revolution they call it these days. But we live in the information age, and that's not a problem anymore. In previous generations, information was perhaps harder to come by. You had to rely on, 3 TV stations only. I know my kids are shocked when I tell them about, having a TV that didn't have a remote control. You had to press the button. It was only 3 channels. Even for those of you that will know from the days when you didn't get good reception, I used to have to stand with my finger on the button to keep the channel focused. Those days are gone. Information is everywhere. So what's most important is to actually have knowledge. And why I say that is that you need to be able to filter through all of that information and understand what is relevant, what is important, and what actually means something or what it means so that you can turn that into knowledge so that you are able to actually take action when it is appropriate and not take action when it's not appropriate. So that's what's really, really important. The reason why I dwell on this point is that's what today's session is all about. Is helping you take on board all of that information that's happened. We tend to try and do this because we do it every week. We focus on what's happened in the last 7 days. We give you all that information, then we try and break it down. The guys will run through some examples. We'll take all of your questions, break that down into knowledge for you so that you know what you should be doing to set yourself up. And so, if I can just leave you with this thought, information is important, but it's not just information in its own right. It's having the right information and understanding what that means. Because, there's no point in learning something and staying static because things change and chop and move and so forth. So you constantly need to be taking in that information, but you need to know what it means so you can make sure you're on the right path. I think we'd all know for any first home buyers on the line that to try to follow a strategy that perhaps your grandparents did, 50, 60, 70 years ago, it's not the same when they were buying their first home as it is for you today. Things have changed. That's why you can't just learn information once and stick there. You've got to have a system in place to keep on absorbing that new information, turning it into knowledge and discarding what is irrelevant to you. If you want to know more about that, obviously this is the best first step, joining us today. Later towards the end, I will talk you through, further steps that you can take and how you can move forward further on that journey and how you can potentially get there faster. So do stick around if you want to hear more about that. So for me, I didn't always own a home. I understand the pain and frustration. I've been there when you're getting kicked out of your rental home, whether it be by the landlord because they want to increase the rent, whether it be because you couldn't afford the rent and you're getting kicked out. Your housemate might kick you out because you don't get on. They might be moving their girlfriend in or whatever it is. We all know this pain. I've been there, constantly moving, having no security, no sense of a home. It's really, really stressful and it's not an enjoyable time. And I did that for years and years and years. Now is a very different story. I'm no longer homeless anymore. I now own 11 homes. I've got multiple homes. I own my own home and I have a number of investment properties. But it wasn't easy. It took hard work, but there is a system to doing that. There's a structure and a process. And so I've been through that whole spectrum. So it doesn't matter where you are today, whether you're just looking to buy your first home and, you can relate to this issue, or whether you're looking to buy your first investment property because you've got your home, you build up some equity, or you might already own multiple investment properties and you're looking to really up level to the next thing and get more out of it. Today's session has something for everyone on that line, and it doesn't matter where you are, we can walk you through doing that. So, what I really bring to today's session is an understanding in terms of having that firsthand experience. I've been there. I've now at the end of that journey. And I also bring, the Regimed training as well. So I am actually a qualified accountant. So I do understand the numbers and how it works, both the emotional side of owning your home as well as the numbers. Because for most of us, most things break down to health, wealth, and relationships. So as much as we like to think it's not all about money, it does mean a lot to people. So I still know how to tie everything back to not only feeling good about having your own home, but also feeling good financially about that. So hopefully today we can break down some of those myths and really get you some key knowledge out of today's session. How are we going to do that? Well, this afternoon, what we're going to do, I'm going to go through 3 key sections. The first one is going to be the information section. So as I said, I'm going to run through what's happened in the last 7 days. We'll go for about 5 minutes. Then we can get into the main section of today's session, which is the knowledge section. That's where we open it up live, put all your questions in the Q&A now, get to the top of the list. We're going to break that down and try and create that information into knowledge relevant for all of you on the line today. As I said, it doesn't matter where you are in the journey. There's something for everyone, first home buyers right up to people that own multiple investment properties. There is something in today's session for you. And then I'm going to close out, as I said, if you want to know more about how to sort of turbocharge your journey and get those next steps moving forward, I'm going to set out a path to success for you and how that should look. So let's get stuck into it. It's been a few minutes already. Let's find out what has been happening around the country in the last 7 days. Number of key themes. These are our top stories. Being priced out of the market. We've been talking about that a lot. What happens if you're worried about that? What are some of your options? And what are some of the pitfalls if you end up owning 2 homes? Melbourne becomes the cheapest capital city in the country to rent in. Unbelievable given its size. House prices, surprise, surprise. Westpac, one of the major banks, has up-leveled the forecast again for this year and into next year. When we talk about new construction, new build homes, what should you look for? And we'll give you some advice around that. And then obviously that widening gap between freestanding homes and attached homes, apartments. What does that mean and what can you do to set yourself up appropriately for that? They're the key themes. What have we seen in terms of statistics? Our favourite one, auction results on the weekend. Another fantastic weekend. We saw just under 82% national clearance and just under 3,000 homes, 2,920 homes went to auction on the weekend. That's the busiest auction week in terms of volume that we've had since June this year. So you think about when Sydney and Melbourne went into these long lockdowns, it hasn't been that busy until then. So it's really showing you how quickly we've bounced back. Again, Melbourne leading the charge. You can see here, 1,500 homes, almost double what we saw in Sydney. It still hasn't quite cracked a Super Saturday yet. As always, I've been saying to everyone that Melbourne would bounce back. It's got a lot of catch up to do. If you've been following the numbers, that is the busiest weekend Melbourne's had since back in March, which is, when we were really booming right across the country, obviously coming out of the lockdowns from 2020. So what do you expect to see from this? Well, these are very much historically what's happened, but I think this has given you a clear guide that there is still a strong level of demand out there more and more people have got the confidence now to relist their homes. And I expect to see this going gangbusters right through to the end of the year. For those of you that are sort of wondering a bit more about the stats, we always see here, these graphs sort of talk about, in terms of the results that you see here, these are what we call preliminary results. They're obviously done on a Monday after the results have come through. So of those total homes, how many did they actually see cleared and uncleared? So effectively for Melbourne, they already had, when they produced this, 1,200 results out of the 1,478. So, they generally put these out with a very high level of confidence. But for those of you that wonder why later when you see it, you see a final clearance rate, and typically it's usually goes down a little bit, sometimes it goes up, is when they get those results in that they haven't seen yet. But again, that gives you really, really high confidence in terms of those numbers that we've seen come through. All right, I've been chastising you guys for about 10 minutes. So if you don't know who I am, my name is James Maitland. I'm the General Manager here at Salvo, and I've helped create more than 11,500 homes for people just like you on the line today. If you don't know much about Salvo, you're not a customer yet, well, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. What do? I could go on for another 45 minutes. I could go on for 4 days, in fact, about what we do. We have a number of different businesses and a number of ways that we can help you. But ultimately, everything we do is all about helping you create a home. So as I said at the start of today's session, it doesn't matter where you are on that journey, whether you're a first home buyer or a professional investor or somewhere in between looking to just upgrade to your next home or buy your very first investment property. We're all about helping you along that journey. So, right from helping you find that property, manage that property, and find the right finance or refinance where you are. It doesn't matter where you are in that journey, there's something that we can help you. And that's why we're really, really excited to have you on today. That's why we do these sessions, is to try and find a bit more out about you and hopefully see if we can partner with you to help you fast forward that journey. Today, on the panel, we're joined by 3 of our key experts in here, Greg Arbeck, Jack Jan, and Lucas Karras. These guys have got a wealth of experience. They will be breaking down all of your questions, answering them for you. And obviously, anyone who wants to find out more and wants to have a more private discussion about any of your issues, these guys would love to catch up with you. I believe we can see light at the end of the tunnel, as I said, and hopefully we'll actually be able to have you in our office, and get you a coffee or whatever it is. In fact, we might even be able to meet you in a coffee shop, which is a bit of a novelty and very, very exciting. So I will work through how we can do that later in the session. All right, so that's enough introduction. That is the end of section 1, the information section. We're now going to move into section 2, which is the knowledge portion of today. As I said, it is about 2:42. So we'll run for about 20 odd minutes. We'll get as many of your questions as possible. As I've said to you before, the best way to get value out of today is be involved, pay attention. It's only 20 minutes. Have laser focus, get involved, ask your questions, and really, really think about what we say and ask some follow-on questions if anything doesn't make sense for you. So if you haven't done this before, there's 2 simple ways to do it. Drop it in the Q&A. I can see there's already a ton of questions coming through on my screen there. That's the primary method everyone seems to like. Anyone who's brave and wants to actually join us live on the virtual stage, feel free to raise your hand and we will unmute you and you can come onto our virtual stage and ask questions. Don't worry if you don't feel brave enough for that. The Q&A is a great method and very few people have ever been brave enough in the last 18 months to join us live on the stage. All right, enough about that. As I said, let's focus. 20 minutes. I want your dedicated attention and involvement if you really want to leave today having achieved something and got some value out of today's session. So first cab off the rank. I mentioned before, of course, always good to talk about when the market is going up. And surprise, surprise, APRA announced that they were going to increase the buffer. We talked about that last week. If you're not sure what it is, check out the recording. But even despite that, Westpac increased the forecast of house prices. Who's got the stats as to what exactly they forecast around the country and why they're looking so strong?
Yes, James. After the last week, I think it's April, they announced the new the buffer, which is increased from the 2.5% to 3%. The Westpac, which is one of the biggest bank in Australia, is still updating the forecast for the property price. Now they expecting the property price to raise 22% this year, up from the last prediction, which is 18%, just made a couple of months ago. And also, not only this year, they also are lifting the next year's prediction, the growth from the 5% to 8%.
All right. And where are the other banks sit? Is Westpac on its own, or, the other banks also the same?
The other bank also expecting the same. So it's an ANZ Bank is also update the forecast and expected that the national growth more than 20%. And the CBA, the biggest bank, also expected the same growth. Okay,
good. So I've seen a few other questions from people coming through saying, yeah, but, how's that sit in terms of affordability and, what can I do if I'm out there? I can't remember who it was. I was having a good chat with someone this week just about the gap between the price point of freestanding homes versus apartment. And I think it's got bigger and bigger. In fact, I don't know who it was. Who was it I was speaking to about this? Greg, good. All right. So Greg, I think you were saying it's one of the biggest gaps on record, which is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Or, perhaps can you share with everyone what it means?
Well, as we've already covered this in a while back, but firstly, as you're saying, the gap between houses and apartments is the greatest it's ever been. But in a lot of respect, that actually creates opportunity for people that are actually getting into the apartment market, because ultimately, when you look at history, that gap will need to narrow. So not that houses will get cheaper, but as affordability of freestanding houses gets crazier, more people will look at apartments. And with that respect, the value of apartments will increase. So yes, it's a huge gap at the moment relative to what it has been before, but that can create an opportunity for someone to get in at the cheaper prices and see some growth over the next 5 to 10 years.
All right, I just saw an interesting question from Charlie. And Charlie, I'm gonna just add a little bit to your question you've asked there. So Greg, the question basically was around, should I buy a freestanding house or an apartment? I want to just add to that a little bit and say, I think very rarely have I ever met anyone who said, no, I must only ever buy an apartment. I think generally, perhaps people as they get to the later stages of their lives like the convenience of apartment. But typically, the great Aussie dream is to have, the quarter-acre block. For those of you that don't understand the old imperial system, that's 1,000 square metre block. Yeah. That's not reality anymore. And I guess with this gap, what is the advice to people like Charlie on the line? That could be your dream, but should they be looking to compromise, or what's the advice to people out there struggling to get their foot on the ladder?
Well, this, as what we've always said, you've got to look at it and say, do I buy in the right location, which is always the advice we give, is buy at the right location, or do I then go and buy something 100 k's out of the city? So that's your choice. Our advice is rather buy in the right location, but go into an apartment initially and use that as a leverage point to be in the right location and allow that to grow, and allowing you then to get into the next property in the right location, not sitting out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, good. All right, I think that's good advice. Ilya, I saw you had a similar question. I think Greg answered it there. Just update your question in the Q&A if you want something more on that, but hopefully that answered it. I mentioned at the start of today's show as well about Melbourne having some of the cheapest rents. And I did see quite a few questions coming from people who say, yeah, it sucks. I've had a big drop in my rent. I've got an investment property. I used to get this. I've now got that. Obviously, there's been a lot of pain out there. I know myself, basically owning all my properties in Melbourne, that it has been a tough time over the last 18 months. How do we rank? Well, I guess before we get into that and hopefully answer everyone's questions there, how exactly do our rents compare to the rest of the capital cities? I'm still in shock that we're the cheapest out of everyone. Surely Adelaide's got to be less than us.
Me too, James. I think lots of people same with us is very surprised. Melbourne now becomes the cheapest capital city to rent a house in the country. So even we saw in Adelaide, the rent is more expensive than us. So from the report of the domain in regards to the rent of the major capital city, the Melbourne's median asking rental price now is dropped down to $430 per week. And they compare with the Sydney, which is the most expensive, the asking rental price, which is $580 per week. So even Adelaide, I want to mention that, is $440 per week, $10 more than Melbourne.
So basically on simple maths, I think that's about $150 a week more expensive in Sydney than it is in Melbourne. And obviously Adelaide, $10, $20 more expensive again, which, I think if we look back historically, Sydney's always been the most expensive, but typically, Melbourne sits up there in number 2 position. I think sometimes Canberra pips it a few times. Obviously, our federal politicians spending our taxpayer dollars on rental accommodation are happy to pay anything. But that's a bit of a shock. So if we can maybe help everyone on the line understand, how have we ended up in that position? I mean, aside from coronavirus, there's got to be more to it than why we've ended up in this spot.
Yes, I think when we think about it, Melbourne as the second biggest city, we are assuming logically we used to be always the second largest, the rental market of the country, just following the Sydney. So if everybody dropped the rental, I think Melbourne dropped a little bit, Sydney dropped a little bit. We should be still in the second place, right? But how are we going to be the last at this moment? I think, of course, the corona is a major reason for us because...
Was it, Jack? I know we joke, and I see it. Those of you that follow a lot know I love TikTok with young daughters. That everyone says Melbourne always wants to break world records. We broke the record for the most lockdown city. Is this just Melbourne wanting to hold another record of the cheapest rentals, or is it more?
Because we got another record with the longest lockdown the city in the world, which means we hate it more than any other capital city in the country. Plus, any other capital city, the rent, slowly, they still keep increase, but Melbourne hasn't, which is also the major reason to create the gap between Melbourne and other cities. For example, 3 months ago, we actually has the same level with Adelaide, but now the Adelaide is more than us, which means Adelaide is still increased because they haven't been such long-term lockdown. They haven't hit it by the COVID that much than Melbourne.
So I think, Jack, just correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but I think that's a really important point for everyone on the line today, is that, if the gap's this big, part of it has come because Melbourne rents have gone down. There's no denying that. But the other part of that reason for that gap is that the rest of the countryside has gone up. And so that's effectively, widened that gap or doubled it. As you said, 3 months ago, Adelaide rents were cheaper, but they've just kept going up. And so they've now overtaken them as well as us coming down. So, long-suffering landlords out there, everyone that's been throwing in here, I've been noticing as you've been talking, the Q&A has been going off with people effectively agreeing, saying it sucks. I'm tired of getting such a cheap rent for my amazing property. What's the good news, or what can we read into this? How do you give people some knowledge out of this information? What should they be expecting? What's going to happen in the future? Is there anything positive, or should we just turn you off now?
Yeah, I really understand. I'm pretty understand that all the landlord, the country, because they've been through the really, really tough, last 18 months, like we said, as every landlord have to drop the price. They're thinking, okay, but let's say the gap is like this big, and Melbourne eventually will still take at least the second place of the country because we are the second largest city, and everybody wants to live in Melbourne, move into the Melbourne. So eventually we need to catch up. And plus, now we got such big gap, and think about it, the Melbourne's the rental will be rock high and very quickly. We'll in the next maybe 6 months and 1 year, we're gonna be take to take over any other city and it becomes the second again, as long as the international border is opening and everything is getting on the track, which we're currently saying that. So the positive things I think is that landlord has to think about it is in the next couple of months and even the next year is how quick our rental is going to be recovering, and which got a potential, the big increase, huge increase on the rental. So which is the good things, I think, for the landlord.
All right, I've just been, while you've been saying that, I've been taking control of the Q&A here myself. I've never seen it get so much attention here. So, hopefully Jack sort of explained that to everyone on there, and, no one said shut him off. I think, that was a really good example for all of you that were listening at the start when I talked about turning that information into knowledge, is that you need to be able to break it down and understand it. So, Jack explained to you, the key drivers around rental growth and house price growth, demand, everything, and all the reasons why we haven't had it. And, the simple thing, I guess, when the rest of the country is up, they're not going to come back down. We're going to catch up to them. So, we really should see, is it going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month, next quarter, next year? That's much harder to say, but I can definitely say, as Jack said, expect over the next few years, we're going to see some really solid growth in Melbourne for no other reason than we've got to catch up to the rest of the country. Add on top of that it's going to be turbocharged by the borders opening up again, students coming back, migration coming back. All of the people, that thought it was better to live elsewhere are going to realise all of a sudden with these cheapest rents, they're going to come back to Melbourne. That's all going to have price pressures. And once they're here, they're probably not going to move again. So, I think that was a good answer, Jack. And I think that was a really, really good topic for most of our people that are on the line that are landlords, because I know we do focus a lot on first home buyers. So that was a really, really good thought to have there. So having said that, I do want to sort of acknowledge quite a few questions here from first home buyers, and how do they get into the market? Greg talked about the gap between freestanding homes and apartments. One of the things that we always talk about and is often an option for first home buyers is looking at new build homes. So can someone perhaps break down, I guess, the typical thought of a new build home, which might be why first home buyers don't always think about it, is going to an open house. It's a brand new home, just finished. You can still smell the fresh paint. Everything is top notch, but that's not necessarily what we always talk about when we're talking about first home buyers and new build homes and the options that they have in order to purchase a home.
Yeah, James. Look, obviously buying a new property, there is a number of things that buyers out there have to sort of consider before making the big step. I can give you some sort of advice for those people before the things they need to consider, 5 things specifically.
Should I ask everyone? I'm pretty sure everyone on the line, do you want Lucas's famous tip section? Greg, come on. Can we let him give tips?
Yes.
All right, good. All right, Lucas, hit us with the tips.
I promise to make it quick.
I
would make it very quick. So number one thing before purchasing a new property is always consider the location. Everybody says location. Many advisors actually say when buying a new property is to buy the location first. So when you're looking at buying a new property, always look at the importance of location.
And that sometimes, I guess, goes against new build homes, because typically when people are thinking about a freestanding home, albeit Greg suggested that's not always the best option, they're in these new land estates that tend to be, 40, 50, 60, 70 Ks away from the CBD and perhaps don't have the infrastructure and the, well-established location that people are used to. So does that mean you shouldn't buy new, or how do you reconcile that?
Look, when you purchase a property, you have to always consider the potential growth. Okay, so you have to always do the sums before purchasing to make sure that your investment is in sync with your budget and to scale out any potential growth. So it's very, very important, because as we said before, people might not be able to get into the dream property to buy a house straight away. So they've got to take certain steps to achieve what they ultimately want. So it's very important when you purchase a property to always look long-term and the potential of growth and returns.
Yeah.
So that was my second tip. So thanks for that. Okay, now I'll give you another tip. What makes this place stand out? Okay, so when you purchase a property, try to look for any unique or charming features. For example, having amazing views or having great amenities within the building.
Okay.
Tip number 3 is how much flexibility will I have when it comes to design? So, when you purchase a brand new home, you also have the option to buy something that's not completed yet. It's what we call off the plan purchasing. And that could be 3, 6, 12, or even 18 months before the property is ready. So it's very important when you purchase like that to ask quite a lot of questions around if there's any options to tailor your property. Is there any options for different color schemes? Normally you can get the light and dark color scheme. Fixture and fittings. Do you have the option to purchase an upgrade? Other things like, do I have an option to purchase a car space or even a second car space? Find out if you're buying off the plan and it's not ready yet, what is a sunset clause? When would the property expected to be ready? So they're all the things that you need to sort of consider and find out before you make the big decision.
So I guess, what we're saying is that typically when you are buying something that's already built and completed, you're constrained in some circumstances, I guess, like you said. If it's got 3 bedrooms, it's got 3 bedrooms. It's got 1 bedroom, it's got 1 bedroom. You can't necessarily change that. You can do some cosmetic changes, but I guess what you're saying is that buying off the plan, buying before it's built, gives you that flexibility to change it. Do I want a study area instead of another bedroom? Do I want a smaller kitchen? Do I want an island bench? Do I want all these different things? You do have some flexibility to add that, and I guess tailor it to exactly the way that you want to live your life, and make something that I guess is unique and special for you.
That's right. And my last tip is, get an idea of how your new place is going to look like. We all know that, especially when you buy something that's not built yet, developers are very skilled into making things look better than what they are in real life. Make the apartments.
Some people say so are salespeople as well.
Yeah, exactly. So look, before you purchase, don't just look at a picture. If you can, always view a display suite. So whether you buy, something that's off the plan or nearly completed, there's a display suite that you can enter, walk through, and have a look, get a feel of the quality of finishes that they've got there and the upgrade options that you can purchase. So you can get a better feel and understanding of really what you're getting.
Okay, good. All right. We've ticked off investors. We've done first home buyers. What about people that are looking to upgrade or get that next home? We've talked a lot, I guess, particularly in markets that are going up, like we're seeing at the moment, that if you can, you need to sort of be able to position yourself so that, you either buy your next home first or, get a long settlement, try and tie up both homes to complete, the sale and the purchase at the same time. But that's often not possible. I think particularly anyone that took that advice just before this lockdown would know that it was basically impossible for them to then go and sell the home, because until only a couple of weeks ago, you couldn't do inspections. So invariably, they wouldn't have been able to line that up no matter how long a settlement they got. Bridging loans are complex and difficult, but a necessary means if you're in this situation. So perhaps can someone give some tips and tricks and pitfalls or advice to those people out there that are looking to upgrade to their next home? What should they be looking out for, and what are some of the things that they need to be wary of if they do end up needing to get a bridging loan to get them between having purchased their next home and actually completing the settlement and sale of their existing home?
Yeah. Firstly, before I get into that, if you can avoid it, avoid it. Okay. We've already covered that they try, as you say, James, try and tie things in. However, in circumstances like lockdowns, like you've said, might even be a situation where you've building another home while you haven't sold your existing property. These delays. Now, bridging loans are tricky. Number one, they're more expensive than traditional loans, so you've got to be sure that you're aware of this. Number one, the interest rate on bridging loans, it's not straightforward. These are calculated on a daily basis. So you're paying a lot more. It's calculated on a daily basis, but then paid monthly. So be aware of that. It's a very, very important thing. The other one,
the power of compounding we always talk about.
Yep.
That you're saying effectively, doesn't matter so much about the interest rate. Might only seem a slight bit more expensive than your typical loan, but it compounding every single day means that it gets bigger and bigger by the end of the month.
Yes, so bridging loans are tricky in that respect. You might think you're going to be aware that bridging loans, it's compounded daily. So,
and you need a degree in Microsoft Excel to be able to figure that out, don't you?
Yeah, it's crazy. So that's the other thing. The other thing is, again, be sure, because of that and other factors, because things are is allow for more payments than what you think you're going to be paying. So, what happens, for instance, if the house you wanted to sell didn't quite fetch the price you expected, allow for that shortfall and then some extra payments.
I guess as well, Greg, on the flip side, the buyer of your house might be upgrading their house, so they're wanting a longer settlement to tie all that up. So
tie up.
Just as you tried to do it, I guess you've got to factor in that, a normal 60, 90-day settlement, you might need to allow for 120, 150-day settlement because that person's trying to avoid a bridging loan themselves. Always
factor in, rather put more, as I call, more fat in there than what you need, so that you're not on a thin edge. The other issue as well, with your bridging finance, make sure you understand the default sections. Okay, and be very, very careful about that. There might even be that you think you want a bridging loan for 6 months, but you end up selling your house in 6 months and 2 days. However, there's a default in the contract that says after 6 months, you're now in default and the lender can sell your home. So make sure.
It's a little harsh, doesn't it?
But I say, check the wording of the default to make sure that that's not in there. Another thing is LVRs, loan value to lendings. Make sure that the combined property, usually they're looking at about 70%. So you can accommodate that sort of thing. Fees, check out the fees. Again, we looked at the interest rates daily. Have a look. There could be a lot of fees in there. Make sure that the lender that you're using is not hammering you with fees. Other few other things I was thinking of. Yes, check that your lender might allow you to freeze your payments or capitalize them. So try find the lender that's going to be flexible in that. Now, if your current lender doesn't do bridging loans, so this freezing could happen if your current lender does it. If it doesn't happen, then you might need to switch lender, but that might then trigger the break fees on your previous lender. So just be aware of these pitfalls. At the end of the day, my final thing is to say, if you can avoid it, avoid it. So those are the sort of the key things. There are some big pitfalls, but as long as you cover that, because of circumstances that you've found your perfect house, you don't want to lose it, or like I said, renovations, whatever it is, then this can be an option to go to look at, but with those in mind, those particular points.
Yeah, I think there's nothing more stressful as well as exciting as buying a new home. And you want to have that balance that you don't end up being so stressed out by it that you lose that joy and so forth of having a new home and getting what you really wanted because you're so stressed out about the fine print in these. So I guess Greg's simple advice is avoid it, and then you don't need to know. Not always practical. So I guess, just think about what he said. If you are in that position, check the recording on YouTube and just write out that checklist that Greg ran through, because there's a lot of gold pieces of nuggets there that, really help you navigate through that in a safe and hopefully less stressful way.
Yep.
Okay, we've gone about 5 minutes over time that I said we would do. So as I said, I do want to just run through the third and final section and just sort of tell you what are the next steps and what might be a path to increase your knowledge and effectively apply that in your situation. So, if we look where we are right now, 2021, it's almost done. 2022 is next year, 2023 and beyond. How are you going to get yourself through here? It's not necessarily always linear as we see here. So, if you want to achieve your goals, you want to get somewhere and you want to move through these years and just keep up leveling yourself, there's a couple of different paths that I see that people can take. On path A, you can do nothing, make no changes from today. And it's tried and tested over thousands of years. 2022 will become 2023 and so forth and so forth and so forth. And you don't need to make any changes. But what I just say to you is that if you are looking to buy that first home, the next home, an investment property, whatever it might be, and you've been trying for a while and you haven't achieved it, if you don't make a change, don't expect a different result. So when I say do nothing, I don't mean that you're physically doing nothing, but you're not making a change. So you're not going to take on board what I've said here. You're not going to make changes, do something differently. Don't expect to get a different result. And for some of you, maybe that's okay because you're kicking goals and I'm really, really happy for you. And that's great. But for a lot of you, you're going to need to make a change. So the first way you can do that is to take on board what we've discussed today, understand the concepts and go out there and apply it and use it yourself. And hopefully you'll move further and further forward through those years as you want to do. But for most of us, we're not going to be able to self-motivate. We need to know a little bit more. This is just short. And as I said, information is changing every single day. So the alternative path to get through those years is to do it with us. Now, what I mean by that, as I said at the start of today's session, is that we have a lot of businesses, we do a lot of different things, but ultimately we're all about helping you create a home. So, I'd love to be able to work with you. I'd love to understand more about you and help you achieve that goal quicker, easier, and less stressful. As Greg said, stress is never good. And there's a lot of things that you can do. And the amount of experience that we've got within Salvo is so vast that we can help you in any areas that you are, whether it be finding the property, financing the property, or managing that property. That whole spectrum and that triangle of key, things that you need to do, that's what we're all about. So it's not going to be for everyone though. We call this triangle of key things the actionable knowledge method. And it's really, really important that, you've got to be prepared to, roll up your sleeves. You've got to be confident and prepared to actually take those actions. You've got to understand, I guess, what we're talking about. You don't need to know about it, but you've got to understand that you need to make changes and how you need to be able to absorb that information and come through. And ultimately, you've got to be actually ready to do the work. We're not asking you to do a lot of work, but you can't be one of those people who said, yeah, later, because later equals never. So not everyone is going to be a right fit for us. But if you're here today, you're excited, you've got value out of what we've discussed today, then it will be a good fit for you. So how can we help you? Well, as I said, there's lots of different ways that we can help. So I've thought long and hard about this. And the most meaningful way that we can help you without asking you for a big commitment and actually give you value is to catch up one-on-one. So what I'm asking you for today is to give us 15 to 20 minutes of your time. Okay, we can do this virtually. We can do it on the phone. We can meet up, as I said, now if you live in Melbourne, we can meet up with you face-to-face in a coffee shop. Lucas and Greg or Jack will pay for the coffees. Even they might even shout out for a croissant for you if that's how you're inclined. But all you need to do is dedicate that amount of time to us. And I guarantee you'll walk away with some value. And that's the best way that you can actually achieve something. So what does this involve? Well, it's really, really simple. The idea is just to meet you, find out a little bit more about you. You've probably got a lot of questions that you perhaps didn't ask today. We can sort of run through with you and understand where you are on that ladder. As I said to you, there's something for everyone. It doesn't matter whether you're just starting out and looking to buy your first home or, you're already a very seasoned and experienced investor or somewhere in between. There's a part of our business and there's an expert that can help you get more out of what you're doing at the moment. So that's really what we want to understand where it is. And then we can suggest some strategies and some next steps for you to move forward that you can do straight away by yourself. You don't need anything more. And then we'll talk about some more medium and longer term strategies that we can work together with you to help you achieve those goals. So that, I believe, is the best way that you can expect to get value out of today for the smallest amount of commitment from you. It doesn't cost you anything other than 15 to 20 minutes of your time. Who doesn't go and get a coffee every single day? If we're going to shout it out for you, then it's a great way to really see if this is the right fit for you, see if you're the right fit for us. So if that sounds like you, how do you do it? Well, it's really, really simple. There's 3 ways. First of all, for those of you that are live on Zoom, you can jump into the chat and there will be a link there. When you join the Zoom, you should have also been redirected in your web browser to the booking page. And lastly, we'll send you a follow-up email. For those of you that are joining us from Facebook, there should be on our homepage, should be a link that you can book that, or feel free to reach out in the comments and we'll send you the link to book one of those sessions. They do fill up fast, but we do dedicate time in everyone's diaries just for these bookings. So if you jump on now, you should be able to get your preferred time. As I said, it is a very, very small commitment and you can still expect to get real value out of it and actually walk home with some strategies you can implement straight away. So before I go, I just want to give you another story. I love stories, but I want to tell you about a time just before this long lockdown in the June, July school holidays. I managed to get away for a few days with the family to Hamilton Island. Fantastic place of the world. In the middle of winter here in Melbourne, there's nothing better than getting up to some sunshine and warmth and actually being able to swim in the water without a full length wetsuit. So we had a great time. And I think it was on the second day when my eldest daughter, Isabella, said to me, "Dad, I'd love to get up in the morning and watch the sunrise." I said, "That sounds like a good idea. Let's do it." I thought it'd be a great experience and I was excited for it. So that night, jumped on Google, said, "When does the sun rise in Hamilton Island?" To my surprise and horror, 4:45 a.m. Now, we all know that's one of the joys of going on holidays, being able to sleep in. So I didn't really feel like getting up and I was about to say to her, "Let's not do it." And I thought, no, she was excited. You've got to actually take that action if you want to get those results. So I set my alarm. Now, we've all had this before. What do you reckon happened? This thing went beep, 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 beep at me. What did I do? I hit the snooze button. It was the simplest thing. I threw my phone down in disgust and I rolled over and went back to sleep. 8 or 9 minutes later, it went beeping again. I said, "I'm not getting up. I'm tired." I looked at Isabella and I hit stop. I said, "I'm not doing it." Now, probably 2 minutes later, I suddenly sat up and I said, "What am I doing?" She was so excited. I was excited. We're going to have fun. No, let's get up. So I jumped up out of bed, got dressed, woke her up, ran to the top of the hill. We took this amazing photo. You can see the look of excitement and joy on her face. We had a great time. It was fantastic. And, it's one of those memories that I'm always going to remember, to the day I die. And I know how much she really enjoyed it. It's nice to spend one-on-one time with just one of your kids. And we were back before everyone else was awake and down at breakfast. So it was a really, really great experience. And I'm so glad that I did not just fall back asleep and go and sleep through it. Why am I telling you this? Well, you know how easy it is. You've all done it before with your phones hitting the snooze or the stop button on the alarm. Apple make it so easy to do it. And that's what we often do in life. We're constantly saying, "No, I'll do it later, later, later." But you've got to remember, it's the people that don't hit snooze, that don't hit stop, just like what I did on my holiday, that actually get those memories, make those, lasting impressions and things that you always remember. Like, this is a fantastic photo. I love this. And I'm always going to remember this memory. But it was so easy for me not to have got this memory and say, "I'll do it next time. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it later," whatever it is. So the reason I'm telling you this is I want you to just think about, because I know most of you will be looking to tune out now, switch off, and won't have booked one of those sessions. You'll say, "Oh, I'll wait till he sends me an email. I'll do it next week." Just remember, time is of the essence. Later equals never. And I really, really encourage you, we're only asking for 15 minutes of your time. Be one of those people like me that makes those memories, kicks those goals and achieves what you want to do, and book one of those sessions today, because I guarantee it's the best thing that you'll do and realistically get value out of it. So that is it for today's session. It's been good. It's been rapid fire. We have gone over time a fair bit. So I apologize for those of you that were looking to get out. The school bell will go in about 10 minutes. So you still have time to quickly rush to pick up your kids for those of you whose kids have gone back to school. So from me and everyone on the panel, thank you very much for your time and sticking with us to the end of today's session. We look forward to seeing you hopefully in person. If not, we hope to see you again on one of these sessions. In case you don't remember, we do this every single Wednesday, 2:30 p.m. here, Melbourne, Daylight Saving Time. So join us again whenever you've got time or you've got any questions. We look forward to seeing all of you again, and thank you very much for spending the time with us this afternoon.